All right, welcome back. Once again, this is the Underground Experience. I'm Mr. J. We are doing it tonight with Damage from Yang Fu Front. Damage of Yang Fu Front. Of course, you can always go to our website, www.empiremusic.com. That's Empire Music spelled Musiq. Of course, check in on the funder for the Underground Experience documentary, as well as the merch and the music that we have up. Check out all our upcoming projects and everything we have going on, and upcoming sponsorship funders that's going to be up as well, coming soon. We're glad to have everybody checking us out, and we're getting ready to have Damage from Yang Fu Front come on directly. Also, I would be remiss mention not to mention the passing of Violetta Wallace, um, Big's mother, and we wish her and the rest of the family nothing but peace and condolences and grace in this time that they're dealing with. So, just a second, we're going to try to get Damage to come on in. We have just invited him in. Last week we had Young Z, and we're going to work on getting him back again and getting a better interview with him going forward. So as soon as we can get a date certain for him, we'll have that going on soon. Um, we have a lot of good names coming up soon, um, and I'll be talking to you more about those in the future. Um, like I said, we're just waiting for Damage from Yang Fu Front to come on in, and while you're doing that, please check out, uh, when you get a chance, our radio show. Um, our my radio show, The Underground Experience, is WDRB Media, um, at WDRBmedia.com. That's the Underground Experience radio show every Friday night at 8:45 p.m. Of course, you can go check it out and stream it on Streamer and any one of your streaming platforms, Apple Music, Podcasts. You can check out the Underground Experience radio show. And right now, we got Damage from Yang Fu Front on with us.
Come on,
How's
bro.
it going, man? All
Trying
right.
to get the light in without blocking the camera. What's good?
All right. Basically, on this platform, I just want to give people, a chance to talk about themselves, talk about what they got going on. And then we want to first and foremost start with your background, how you got started, in the game, how you got started writing, just giving a little bit of background history uh, about yourself.
Okay. My name is Damage from Yag Fu Front. I'm in a group called Yag Fu Front. We're from Raleigh, North Carolina. Members of the group are Spinforth, Jingle Bell, and Damage. And I'm Damage, and also Assassin, the DJ. And we came out around in the early 90s. We were doing hip hop then. We still do hip hop to this day, but we're most known for an album called Action Packed Adventure. our first debut album, which was a wild hip hop journey through our experiences and my adventures in hip hop back in the days while we were in college. And I'm also a producer and designer, and we we've been doing hip hop for about 30 years now. We just had our 30th anniversary, and it's been a great experience being involved in hip hop and making beats for 30 years.
No doubt. So, what was your kind of first forte into really writing or getting inspired by hip hop?
I remember when hip hop first started back in the 70s, and there was a lot of parties and DJing going on, and a lot of development of styles of hip hop, parties, DJs, MCs on the mic. It was inspiring back then. I was just a youngster. People started doing music around in the Triangle area, and like people started DJing. That was a big inspiration. There was a guy named Big Cat who had a van that he would drive around, had turntables in the back. He pulled up to the park, and so people were freestyling. I remember when I was a kid, I got a chance to grab the mic and freestyle. After that, I started writing, rhymes and stuff like that. Not taking it serious, probably until I got into college. When I got into college, we started working at WKNC. WKNC was a big hip hop station in the area. It was probably the only station that was playing hip hop at the time, and they would play hip hop from 10 to 6. I used to listen. Crazy DJs who went on to make a name for themselves: Wax Master Tory, DJ Nabs, DJ Craze, DJ Flash. These are all people who kind of came through that area back then, and um, it inspired me to really want to get into music. Years later, I ended up being on the radio station, same radio station as them, and two members of Yak Fu Front came through one night to do some DJing, and it just clicked, and we ended up hooking up, and that's how we ended up being a group.
So, what was your first forte into the studio like?
Um,
Really start.
Really, actually, those guys kind of introduced me to the studio life at the time. They had a record out that was on Tempo Records called Keep On. And we went to do a Keep On remix up in Virginia Beach at this studio called Middy's Recording Studios. Before that, I had been in home studios and maybe a few studios to do work, but never to work on my own material until then. We all went there. So Middy's Recording Studios was like my first experience, and it was a good experience because it was like home. Randy Melton was the engineer. He was really good at kind of adapting his style of engineering to hip hop, and it kind of like broadened our abilities to make music at that time. It was really good.
You said that he adapted his style. What was his more known for before y'all got into it?
He had worked with different bands and artists back then. I think he even worked with the like a flock of seagulls and old '70s rock bands back then. And but he really got us. He really got the hip hop aesthetic. He enjoyed sampling. He introduced us to the Ensoniq ASR rack mount. We ended up getting an EPS 16 plus, then the ASR 10 after that. So he was very influential because of the fact that he was a musician and we were all music. Well, everybody wasn't as. I don't think everybody specialized during school in music, but everybody was in a band of sorts or and played the instrument. So integrating somebody who had worked with a rock band before alongside us who were kind of experimenting with musical instruments as well as using sampling and using records for making beats, it was like a really synergistic kind of feeling there. It was just very together, and so it was like magic. So that was very influential to our sound back then.
And you talked about instruments. Which instruments did some of y'all play?
Uh, Jingle Bell played the horn. Spin Spin also played instruments, and I played a little bit of drums, and I played keyboards.
And how did y'all kind of blend that sound, blend that in with what y'all did initially?
I was kind of like into the found material style of making beats. That's kind of what I got into. So I would take music off of children's records and stuff, and we would all go shopping for obscure or different records that people probably wouldn't necessarily sample at the time. So that was part of it. We wanted to do something unique and original and mass samples that had the same keys and sounds going together at the same time.
And as far as like putting your beats together at that time, what was your process like then?
Um, before we actually had a sampler, we would use like pause button tapes to take a record, spin it back, and do that. And then when we got the ASR 10, our sampling techniques were usually to find small sounds and samples or very unique loops that weren't necessarily like right on tempo, mash them together, and throw like a million samples at it. Like if you listen to our music, you'll see that a lot of our stuff had that same vibe. It was always it was always a mashup. One of our big favorites was like the Bomb Squad that produced Public Enemy. So we kind of were like a jazz fusion of some of the things that the Bomb Squad was doing in our mind.
And when y'all were writing, what did you try to do as far as like your process in the studio, writing and putting things together, putting songs together?
It was pretty exciting. I mean, it was more of a freestyle kind of thing. If we were writing in the studios. We heard the beats right after we made the beat. It was more like we made the beat. I'm like, oh yeah, this is hard. Let's make up something. Instantly, people were writing stuff down. It was like a collective. Other artists were also in the building, and it was just a really great experience. I would say to just kind of like be around creative minds. It was a little competitive. We would throw a lot of lyrics together, um, and it was exciting because it was like on the fly, very spontaneous. Nobody really had a idea of which way it was. It was a lot of freedom of creative direction that we gave ourselves while we were recording. So I would say it was a really good experience.
And during that whole experience, what, kind of song to song, what kind of, timeline did y'all have kind of, how long did it usually take you to kind of finish a song?
I mean, all songs were done that day. We do multiple songs, in a day, and we would just basically come up with the next song, or we would have concepts that we would take and go work in on the studio for some of the more complex ones in terms of the beats. So you have to understand that there were, a lot of songs that we did for the album way before we even got to the point of selecting what songs we were going to do. So, and we had carte blanche to go in the studio at any time and just make whatever we wanted. We were getting food delivered, just completely spending our time in the studio going. We all got it was like a little apartment room out in the beach on Virginia Beach where they rented for while we went to the studio. And we go back and forth between there every day, making track after track after track. And then we finally felt like we had enough music to put together a solid album. So, if I could give you the experience, man, it was a whirlwind. We were running in there. We already had ideas from many years ago. We tried to put all of that into the album to give that experience of what it had led up to us even getting the deal in the first place. So,
And how did that come about? As far as, getting the deal, what led up, what it really kind of bubbled up to that point of getting the deal?
well, we were on the radio station. We definitely were making a buzz around in the area. The whole goal was for us to I had a paper that I was writing about how to get a record deal, how many times people don't actually pursue getting the record deal. What they do is pursue trying to get people to support them around, but not actually going and sending the material off to record labels. And so that was the premise behind a lot of the stuff that we were doing.
Mhm.
So we would put it together. We did what a lot of people do today. It was like a beginning of DIY. You go and you do your own logo, you do your own packaging, you start making your own T-shirts, you start making all of the stuff. It really was unheard of then because people, could only do that through manufacturing and stuff like that. So we would, try to do it through local manufacturing. Back then, you had disc makers and stuff like that for records. We didn't. I don't think we could even afford it right then. But CDs had just come out in terms of you being able to replicate them. So we were making tapes and making covers for them, and we were making CDs and making covers for them, stuff like that. So all that led up to us, kind of like putting it all together and packaging it. And then the main thing was we felt like if we looked on the back of record labels, we could read the addresses. We could send it off to them, and that's how we kind of started going. We started sending it to whoever we would read. Since we were working at the radio station, we would get promos. So on the back, it would have the A&R and have the contact information. We'd use that, and it worked. We got several record deals during that time. So that's kind of how our process went in terms of trying to get the deal. We just kind of targeted record labels, contacted them, showed them what we had, showed how prepared we were in advance, and that's how we got in the game.
So, what was the really initial feeling when you got the message back, or what did y'all get? Did y'all get a call? Did y'all get a letter? Or
Well, I mean, like, you mean like, well, we got several deals.
Mhm.
So, not to like go too deep into the deal structure or anything, but we had three deals where we were contacted. They said they definitely wanted to sign us. Two of them, after going back and talking to the people, they ghosted us. They came down, they said they were gonna give us some money, they spent money on us and all this other stuff and just ghosted. It wasn't until years later that I found out maybe the budget, they felt like they didn't have a budget, or it'd be something else. But those were ups and downs that we had before we got to deal with Mercury. But we really had three solid deals. One was proposed with Elektra and Dante Ross. One was well, no, I'd count. We also had a deal with Wild Pitch Records, but at the time, people were down in Wild Pitch. Um, there were several deals on the table, but Mercury seemed to be the one where we could have the most creative control. I don't know if that was true or not, but that's how they
how it
presented
worked
it.
out?
Yeah, so it was the experience. It was exciting. Of course, everybody around was exciting, but it was a more of experience considering it was an experiment to see the reactions of people when you get a record deal, and it's not about necessarily your ego or you trying to be a star. It's a different thing because you really get to see other people think what they want to about you too. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it was like a weird place for us to be, us being college kids thinking, yeah, if we do this, this will prove our point that, more people can get on if they would, follow the techniques of it. We're just guys, we were radio station guys. We weren't taking, the piss out of anything or hip hop or anything like that. We were taking it serious. But we felt like the people around us were not directly doing that, not directly constantly sending out tapes, and that's what kind of set us different. So that
what
was
was
the
this?
experience.
What was the scene like? You said there's people around y'all, kind of, not necessarily, I guess, following through and taking it serious,
Oh
or
no, they
just
were
kind of
definitely
putting things
taking
out
it
there.
serious. I'm just saying I want to make sure people were definitely taking it serious.
Yeah,
Whether or not they were actually sending out packages directly all the time, that's a different story. You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
So my our whole thing was send out packages. Always look on the back of record labels. Always send it out. Where more people might have gravitated toward, no, I want to get a manager. I want somebody else to do that. I want to concentrate on my stuff. We were just saying that you could do it yourself. Some of these things could be done yourself. You see what I'm saying?
yeah. So what was the scene like back then? Did you kind of see a few other people just kind of move in that direction, or they were trying to do some things, some names in the area at the time?
I mean, Lords of the Underground were there. And there were several groups around that were known to us, like Seventh Tribe was there. I want to say that members of Dead Prez were around in that time. Um, uh, let's see. R.A. the Rugged Man was around at that time. I don't want to miss anybody, but there were a number of artists. Biggie was around, you know, in the area at that time, but it wasn't necessarily a clique or collective, some kind of like thing where everybody was kind of going to different spots and rapping and you would see them. It was
Hmm.
more like with the radio station and the parties and it being a college kind of town that the DJs of all these groups or individuals would be interconnected. So Lord Jazz might do a party, or DJ Assassin might do a party, or Spinforth might do a party in the colleges in the area, and so everybody kind of knew each other through that. So the artists were more connected through the parties, the college aesthetic, and the fact that we would kind of like meet up if there were local shows and things like that. But you know, hip hop was just in its second stage at that time. So a lot of radio stations weren't even playing hip hop. They would advertise no hip hop. So you have to understand that it was more like hip hop like then. You ever seen the TV show Tulsa King?
Yeah,
With
yeah.
Sylvester Stallone, how he came out there and it was kind of like barren, and that's
Mhm.
kind of hip hop was. You know, you have to go out there and establish yourself and kind of put it down in the town, or you're not necessarily going to get any play because nobody's even doing anything like you're doing back on the other side. So that's what it was. But there were plenty of hip hop artists, successful local, that were doing music at that time. And I don't know that we were any different or we set ourselves apart, except for the constant drive to kind of get your music out there is one thing that we all have to do. So you always got to try to get your music out there no matter what.
No doubt. So the growth from then till now, what do you think of it? What do you how do you feel about how the scene has kind of grown a little bit?
Hip hop's North Carolina's hip hop scene still until there's some kind of city connection where people from different cities are able to kind of interconnect and make plans and do stuff like that. It's gonna take a while, if anything, for that to ever happen. There's a lot of media that's against it. There's a lot of local businesses that don't necessarily support it in terms of bands or groups that would be able to have like a weekly thing that would be necessary for hip hop to really get to that level. So it's got a long way to go until we can like interconnect some of these groups or events across the state, past your city, past your local radio station. It's gonna be hard for us to come together. Other states, other hip hop like meccas, and North Carolina is one. If you think about it, like it's no question at all, it's tons of hip hop artists, really, really great hip hop artists, talented, like above the par. So it's kind of hard when everybody can't necessarily support them as groups because we're so individualized by city or part of the state. And I don't mean that in a cliquish kind of way. I mean, that's just how the media works around here. Even in the black media, even the black radio space, it's just going to be difficult for one artist from a whole town to let people know that they're ever from North Carolina. Some people don't even know J. Cole from North Carolina, bro.
Yeah,
Crazy. So, that's just how it's got, it's set up here. Until there's an interconnection, until there's an understanding of where to play, where to circuit, it's hard to have a hip hop scene.
and I think that a lot of times the circuits, the venues change, and especially after COVID, I was just talking to another artist who does hip hop. He's in Greensboro. He was just saying, a lot of people are just starting to come back out a little bit after COVID, but it's not the way it was, before COVID. So you have venues that kind of opened up, some that closed down. Um, so it's hard to tie a lot of those venues together.
For sure. And then you have the fact that, music has changed during COVID as well. A lot of the artists that were doing shows and stuff like that may have not been as savvy to try to translate all of that stuff into online performances or doing TikToks or shorts or stuff like that with their music. So a lot of that stuff during COVID transition to a whole different way of serving or promoting your music. And even though it's still integrated today, it's still a big change. So
Definitely, definitely. And y'all got to the record label, y'all got to Mercury, had a couple of different situations. How do you feel like the label treated you at the time?
um I think the label treated me treated us in a way that what it I didn't feel like it was something that was done on purpose, but I would have thought that the record label at the time would be more open to what we had done previous to getting the deal. And a lot of that stuff has to do with how record labels work, how the internal organization of a record label works. So, in terms of marketing and promotion, I feel like that we were a new group, we were a different group. We weren't, something that was what they were used to in terms of marketing. Plus, we were from North Carolina, and I just don't think they had an idea of how to market us at the time. But there was Ernest. There were people who were behind us at the record label, and it was a good experience. I just know that we were a hard group to figure out what to do with. So uh, I do feel like they lacked on that end. I think that if they had maybe kind of seen the structure that we had and maybe kind of had more of a way to look at it where they didn't poo-poo hip-hop artists at the time or ideas that probably would have worked. We had ideas about using the internet, video, putting up websites, using different techniques that we use today to market and promote it. So I do feel like that the experience was I feel like we were forward thinkers. I think a lot of the stuff that was happening with DIY hip hop, we were forward thinkers, and it just they didn't see it. They didn't see the vision yet. So I feel like they dropped the ball on that end, and that might have affected our how widespread our music was pushed. But ultimately, I think they did see the idea that creativity in hip hop was necessary, meaning that you don't necessarily have to follow everybody else's structure. I think, and then finally, I think they saw the compared us to the Tribe Called Quests or the
Mm,
Far Sides at the time, or the Arrested Developments at the time, and so they just looked to them to try to figure out a way to market and promote us when we really kind of had our own unique thing. We weren't a lot of people wonder whether or not we were influenced or we tried to imitate them, but we were kind of in a bubble here in North Carolina. So we weren't necessarily as influenced as people think. Of those group artists that had similar sounds, we had developed our own sound, kind of separate, what we were doing.
mhm.
So, though that's the type of experience that it was. It was really a good experience up until, it was about time for us to try to do another contract or renegotiate the contract. And luckily, I'm glad that my uncle had helped us to negotiate the contract. We were able to make moves of where we could do something where it wasn't a point of where they would drop us or anything. That we had the choice of whether or not we wanted to continue. And so that made it so that later on down the line we had our own material. We get to keep our stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we got to stay true to ourselves without, I don't feel like we sold out in any way. You know what I mean? When people talk about sellouts and stuff, I feel like we still stay kind of true to what we started when we were in college. Even to this day, it's kind of like we stayed out of a certain way of pandering, not to put us in any kind of, I'm not putting us on a pedestal. I'm just saying, look, man, we just came through as guys from NC and we did our thing. We didn't know about necessarily about the moves or, we didn't know about the Illuminati. We didn't know anything about that stuff. We were just there to hip hop and make beats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, 30 years later, even talking to these guys over the past few years, trying to set up, our anniversary and stuff, one thing I do know is that all three of us had a genuine aesthetic to believe that hip hop was a genre that could change lives in terms of how you could represent it, and it was a good spiritual energy that was in it that made us push forward to bring out those ideals of poetry and competition and music and experimentation with sampling. So at the end of the day, that's why I still do it to this day. I'm in it just for the same pure stuff that everybody kind of came into hip hop to listen to and do. So keeping your aesthetic throughout that's the best part of this whole thing, bro. That's the best part, not selling out to me. You know, I have some new stuff coming up where I'm experimenting with all kinds of ideas of different types of ways of making songs and stuff. But trying to keep the same aesthetic, keep it like genuine without necessarily trying to pander to anybody else. Or and I think that at the core that was what Yeah Food Front was all about. Trying to make something free expression and not pander to anybody else about it. If you like it, that was great. If we can do something that you wouldn't like and make you like it, that's even better. So
Yeah.
that was the concept.
Uh, as far as the track list on that particular album, yeah, like uh, Where'd You Get Your Bobos, Mr. Hook, Busted Loop, Black Liquid, uh, Left Field. Uh, what's one of your favorite joints or something that kind of resonates with you or sticks out to you from that album?
Making the beat left field was really cool. How it came about, the samples that we used, and how we put it together was like unique. It was a different way of actually. Um, it was a different way of putting music together at the time. If you go back and listen to it, there are multiple samples and multiple loops playing at the same time, and we got them to harmonize. So off of the album, I love a lot of the tracks on the album are really my favorites. So I can't really separate them all, but with Left Field, it really stood out as being a standout way that we combined different samples to make a beat that sounded like it all came from the same record. So Left Field is one of my favorites.
That's dope. Um, Speaking of all those things, all those different, labels and being able to try to hold on to the aesthetic, um, we're kind of trying to tie this into, the growth of the scene and people who came up. I mean, you've had notable people like y'all, like Entice, like Little Brother, of course, um, J. Cole, and now Moray. Um, what do you think the through line is, for artists that have been able to kind of, you know, make it and just being able to see I guess, the differences in each and every one of y'all, but the kind of similarities as well. What do you
I,
think
I
some of those
I would
things are?
say that uh when it comes to artists and actually getting on or getting into the public eye, that it's not a crapshoot. There's a lot of work that goes on in behind the scenes. It takes a lot of practice and involvement. And one of the things that I've noticed over time with dealing with many years is the core issue is that somebody that is prolific, somebody is constantly pushing the bar. Um, it may be that a lot of things on my end are kind of built in because I come from back in the day, so it's already built in. But some of these things are kind of like after you do it, like nobody gave it. We didn't have anybody or the internet or anything to be like, how did you guys do it? You see what I mean?
Hmm.
So you had to figure out how to do it. So it's kind of built into us to just be making stuff always constantly, and so ultimately as time went on, there were few people actually doing that, constantly making music, constantly making beats. And so there were only a few hip hop people, who actually existed. You see what I'm saying? So if you can imagine over time as it expanded, that part gets missing. The more people who want to do it, they're like, hey, I can rap, I can bust a rhyme real quick, but they don't practice daily. They don't actually do it 3 or 4 or 10 times a day. And so because that was already kind of built, I think this basically solved that puzzle for most things because that time was built for that. You had to do that if you wanted to just be in the game in general. Where today you can kind of like do a song, maybe you can develop it. It wasn't the same aesthetic. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that that's the key in terms of anybody getting on is constantly making music. Constantly making music, constantly practicing, constantly trying to put something out, constantly. Even if you don't have a deal, it doesn't matter.
And as far as what was the y'all had a video? What was that like? Doing that and seeing it actually be aired.
Our first video was looking for a contract. We flew up to New York to do it. We filmed it over by the Empire State Building, and it was pretty fun. We even drove a big Jeep. Well, no, actually, that's Busted Loop. But in looking for a contract, we were like on the top of a building filming it, and in New York City. That was super exciting, bro. All the rest of the videos that we did, the only video we did in North Carolina for Mercury was Left Field, which we recorded at the Carolina Hurricanes practice skating rink out in Raleigh. But just doing videos in general was dope. We had this idea of taking, we had a big VHS camera, and we would film stuff on college campuses when we would go there, state, UNC, NC State, North Carolina Central University. So our idea is we could make our own videos off of VHS tapes. So we had already kind of had an idea and aesthetic of what we wanted to do. So when filming music videos, it was different because we felt like we could maximize more of our time. And, there's a lot of red tape. So I think we learned from that. And I think for Busted Loop, we got a chance to have a little hand in what was being directed. But, I think that ultimately we really wanted to have a chance to actually direct our own stuff, So that was an experience in itself, making videos and stuff because we were learning about the industry. I personally wish that at that time they gave artists more creative control, because I do feel like we would have been able to do some things, even though they were worried about budget or putting it in the hands of the artist back then. Nowadays they don't feel that way, especially if you got sales or some kind of track record. They'd be more inclined to kind of go with some of the ideas of the artist. So that's one part of the era, the new era that came after us, that we missed. But making videos was great, and it still inspires me to this day. I shoot music videos to this day for other artists and stuff. So that was a great experience. Seeing it on TV, we were on BET, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
People called up. Mama was like, "Hey, I saw you on BET," type thing. So that was a crazy experience too. So
Yeah, I
all that.
do. I remember, seeing the Yank Fu Front video on BET, and I was like, oh, okay. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
You
I,
would try to let people know we were from NC. If you saw looking for a contract, it had the maps in the background and all that stuff. It was
no
good
doubt.
times. I'm trying to tell you, it was the '90s and hip hop. I can't describe what it was for you. Think about it. We were going around. It'd be like Wu-Tang Clan or De La Soul or Tribe Called Quest would be there, or like we go over to California, like Souls and Mischief would be there. We go we went to Atlanta for that big fest they had down there, and we met the Far Side down there. We met a lot of artists, Snoop Dogg. We met everybody, bro, during that whole little the whole run up until us releasing our album. We were doing shows and going everywhere in promotion. So all that stuff was really good, bro. All that stuff was a great experience. There's somebody that's supposed to do a documentary. I'm hoping all that stuff kind of comes out in it. So we'll see. That's gonna be interesting.
Dope. I definitely would look forward to seeing some of that
Yeah.
and that as well. Because y'all definitely came in, in a time and in a space where we had a little bit more freedom. It hadn't, it was right before the big super budget era where they were just kind of wanting to get y'all, artists who were coming out to have, big name directors and stuff like that. And that 92 to 94 era was really kind of a real sweet spot for hip hop as far as variety and artists, and you know you had a
Very
whole
true. It was a lot of unique stuff people were doing back then. People were being more experimental. You had groups like Freestyle Fellowship, Project Blowed. You know what I mean? These are groups out in on the West Coast that that kind of had, we were listening to Razzcast, we were listening to people who were kind of pushing the edge of lyrics and what it meant and what to do with it. You know what I mean? Styles in terms of music and being unique. Uh, I think that during that time was more the realist hip hop time because of the freedom of expression. Like during other eras, I think people were trying to top doing the same thing in a competitive way. But then it was more of how unique and original can you make it? So that's what
Exactly.
I think.
Because
Hmm.
I mean, you could have, listen to a variety of different artists and MCs, and their subject matter was completely different. You could have, the hardcore, the gangster, the quote unquote backpack, the fun rap, the party rap. You could have it all exist in the same space at the same time, and it was just it wasn't it wasn't any friction, there wasn't any um, kind of fakeness or whatever about it. It was just, and a lot of people got to be on those tours, when the
Yeah,
tours were
yeah,
completely
yeah. If you think
first.
about it, it was a lot of tours. It wasn't like interaction and friction and beef like people want to say. Like, artists, sometimes don't get along. It was probably different artists that we encountered that, um, might have had beef with each other. We really didn't have no beef. Nobody, everybody kind of like were like, well, you're from North Carolina. It's kind of like if you go out in the gang territory and you be like, hey man, you rocking that red? They'll be like, oh, that's NC State and I'm from Raleigh. Be like, oh, okay, okay. You know what I mean? That was kind of the vibe. Is that that most of the stuff that was going on, the inner politics and things like that, were just developing. None of that East Coast West Coast beef had started really like that to get to that level. And it was an experience to try to figure out where everything was gonna like take it because in between 92 and let's say 95, that's when the gas was really being pressed on hip hop, and then from 95 to 2000, that's when it really took off. So in the 2000s we had the Puffy era, we had all the other uh we had all the other gains that hip hop made in terms of sales, in terms of people going platinum, in terms of the type of music we were listening to, the push for more gangster style or more competitive, less, more delivery, less creativity. Like we moved into the Puffy era in that late era where all the hits were being recycled. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you know, I think that during that time they really saw the potential of hip hop and wanted to capitalize on it, and so that's kind of how it went. And so a lot of groups got lost in the wayside. And also with us not developing an infrastructure in hip hop, with us as individuals not putting together something that maintains the hip hop history and aesthetic in the same way as other historians have captured the moments of hip hop, and with the current things that are going on where they're trying to erase a lot of history right now,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly, where all of this stuff is going to fall in terms of, how is history going to look back at this time. Um, so, ultimately, I'm glad to have shared this experience with those that are around me because I feel like it transformed, like, the American way of life. It's like a really American situation, and it means a lot to how we live our daily lives to this day. Merchandising, like just for you to have that T-shirt on right now, you feel what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Uh, if you think about it, previous to hip hop, we didn't have variety in jeans, t-shirts, sneakers. We didn't have variety in jackets. We didn't have variety in sweatshirts, sweaters. We didn't have variety in any of those fashion aesthetics. Some of the things are where we push for finer, exotic, luxury items increase that interest in items. It's stuff people never heard of. When Biggie was talking about Waffle House cheese steak and Welch's grape, I mean, Waffle House even benefited from this. You know what I mean? In
Yeah.
a small way, those are the things that change hip hop that won't necessarily talk about the contributions of us as the 16th largest. Like we make so much money for America. We're like the 16th largest country.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
the black community and their spending power is like a country, like the 16th largest country in the
yeah.
world. So with that in mind, that will take you to a whole nother level of understanding of where these individuals put music in terms of where we are today. You see what I'm saying? Like there are people who capitalize on what these young people are doing and they're unaware. They don't even know the extra money that's being generated from it. So
Yeah.
ultimately in this experience, that's why I said I was glad to have around the people that I know, because I don't know how far the hip hop experience will be carried on into the future, not in terms of the truth, because you're losing the people who can tell those stories, and the people who are here listening to music, they've separated themselves from that history. So
Yeah.
it's good that people are spending time reminiscing about it, but we need to have an infrastructure where we can share this information accurately, like grids, or pass down the correct information.
Definitely. That's why
So I appreciate you doing the podcast. That's kind of like a part of it.
that's definitely why I wanted to do this, because I know people have stories and have things that you know most people won't talk about. They will kind of hit the high points and kind of push past all the other detailed information, and the processes of people creating their music, be it writing or producing. People really need to get a snapshot of the entire history, the entire process of everything. Uh,
Yeah, I can understand that. It's kind of like hidden history.
Definitely. And as far as what y'all have going on currently, or what's some things you got coming up?
Well, currently, last year we re-released Action Packed Adventure for the 30th anniversary, and Spinforth has some new releases coming up. For me, I'm experimenting with some new tracks. I've been using different online and AI and different ways of trying to make music. And so lately I've been working on coming up with a solo album and producing for other artists. That's what I have going on. I know the guys have stuff like waiting in the wings behind the scenes that's coming out as well. As for Yahoo Front, I think later on in this year we may be dropping something, whether it be a final release of everything that we've ever done as an anthology or something like that. I think that's coming up later this year. I got a single that I'm about to come out with. It's like a country song. It's like a play on something that happened a long time ago from Yag Fu Front, where they said they were going to put us in straw hats and overalls. And as a joke, I was saying I wonder what I would try to do if I was to make a song like that. So I'm coming out with a song. It's definitely something that I'm trying to do that I feel like is authentic. It's not like I was trying to ape on the country music wave or anything. I think I'm from North Carolina, and I got a little twang in my voice, and I was trying to see what I could do. Uh, um, but ultimately, I think we're trying to be creative, man. Like daily, like every day, we try to push the limits of what we can do as adults. In 2025, with the experience that we have, we're not the most famous group. We don't make maybe a tenth of what the other artists are out here making, but we still have a creative drive, and we also have a vision still. We can, we still bring a lot of creativity to the table. We were forward thinking then. We're still forward thinking to this day. So I think that that's what kind of keeps us in the game of where we might not necessarily be the most well known artist from North Carolina, but we definitely are one of the most revered ones in terms of just being like aesthetically true in terms of hip hop. So I wouldn't trade that for the world, bro. Like it's helped me a lot. It's gotten me in a lot of doors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's definitely helped me in life. So the experience with hip hop and Yag Fu Front, and even up to this day, man, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No doubt. So, what are some advice you would give to some upcoming artists?
Uh, it doubles back to that idea that I was saying, man. Just keep 100% working on stuff, constantly making something, constantly creating. Even when you're in a rut, like, try your best to try to create, even when your normal inspiration isn't where you usually get it from. Try to find new inspiration and new things, broaden your horizons. But being a prolific person is the key to getting to where you want to go. No matter what you want to do with a YouTube channel, if you're trying to make your own t-shirts with fashion design, if you want to become a politician, even just the repetitive nature of the fact that if you're doing something that you love, you need to put all your energy into it, and it will reward you later on. But you can't control when that happens. So it could be 110, 20 years from now, but you can't control it, and you gotta, stay with being true to yourself and collecting your contacts and networking and doing the best you can to let people know what you're trying to do. And that's the best advice I could give. It's the only advice you really need. Really, just keep doing it and don't listen to anybody else. Constantly practicing on your craft, and it will take you to new heights you never seen. Just never know where you're gonna go.
And as far as, you know, straight to consumer versus dealing with labels, what are your thoughts on that?
Uh if you have the money, if you have the money and the infrastructure, do it yourself. If you have money and you have the infrastructure, you got people who are working with you, do it yourself. You still have to network, but in my mind, everything revolves around you getting the money enough to pay into what it is you're doing. Yeah, nothing happened to Jingle Bell or Spinforth. They're still doing music. I just happen to be here tonight representing. The guys are still good. I hope that you guys check out their music and material that's out here on all streaming platforms. I just saw somebody say what happened to Jingle, but uh, uh yeah, it's really about that, man. That's another example. Yeah, people are grown, man. You get older. You don't necessarily hang out with everybody all the time, especially if you three guys has been. It's not like you're in. Got the time of when you were kids in college. People are, our parents, grandparents. You got little kids. So ultimately, that's one of the things that I will also say is the connections that you make, the people that you meet along the way are very important, and you don't want to treat them like they don't matter, no matter who they are. You know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, I think that, connections are the key. That's the best advice I can give. Practicing all the time and making good connections with people and being true to yourself as much as you possibly can, bro. It's a messed up world out here. The music industry is cutthroat, and you want to have some integrity. So always try to keep your integrity in it.
And is, is there anything else that you would like to say about what you got going on or anything else?
Let's see. I want to shout out everybody that's been working with me lately. That would be Joe City, Jay Gray, aka Legal Alien. I want to give shouts out to people who have been instrumental in what I've been doing lately, like Jennifer O'Jenny. She's in here, and Spit Slam Records. They've been influential in terms of what I've been doing. I want to give a shout out to Ryan. David, who is an artist and also somebody that's been helping me a lot in terms of doing a transition, in terms of helping me to put out music. And then I want to send a shout out to, of course, Jingle, Spin, Assassin, everybody that represents hip hop, and you, bro, for staying persistent, hitting me up, getting me on the show. I appreciate you big time and keeping the whole thing going. And y'all look out for my stuff on all streaming platforms under the name Damage from Yag Fu Front. I'm gonna start releasing music, and I hope you enjoy it.
All right, we'll get you out on that, and hopefully we get to network and collab in the future. Um, and like I say, nobody knows everything, but everybody knows something. So network, network, network. Um, we definitely got the Underground Experience documentary I'm working on, and we'll still keep going on with that. And check out the website www.empiremusic.com. That's music spelled MUSIQ. And next week we're planning on having scheduled on the show Mr. Servon from No Limit.
All
Um,
right.
so
Yes,
I
sir.
hope everybody comes back and checks that out.
I'll come back and check out your shows as well. And I also want to give a shout out to my record label, unknownplanet.org. You can find Yag Fu Front exclusive releases and other artists on unknownplanet.org. That's unknownplanet dot period org on the website. And if you're searching for us, it's all one word, Unknown Planet DOTORG.
All right. And that's it, man.
Thanks so much, bro.
Peace.
Appreciate you having me on the show. Peace to you. And peace to everybody. I appreciate everybody that came through and checked out the joint that's on here. I didn't see your messages. If you did send me a shout out, I'm shouting out back.
No doubt. And we hope to have you back on in the future.
No doubt. For sure.
Peace.
Peace.